starting route to Ocilla. For 161 miles, continue on I-75 South.
In today's episode, we're going to Ocilla. If you're not familiar with the area, Ocilla is located in South Georgia, in the middle of the state, pretty much equidistant from the coast and the Alabama border. Ocilla has a population of about 3,500 people. It's a bubble, and a small one at that. When you're here, you get the feeling that these people have never left, at least not for a long time. Though it's only a 3.5-hour drive from Atlanta, it really does feel like a different world. Today we're meeting with people to discuss the culture of this town, and what it's really like to live here, and also the impact of Tara Grinstead's disappearance. Our first stop today is City Hall. We have an important meeting.
Take exit 78 for Georgia Highway 32, towards Ocilla.
We're going to meet the mayor of Ocilla. I figured if anyone could tell me more about this place, it would be him. Right away, this guy was younger than I thought he'd be. He looks like he could be the son of the mayor. His name is Matt, and he's a really nice guy. He sat down with me to share some insight on the town of Ocilla.
Turn left onto North Irwin Avenue. In 500 feet, you will arrive at your destination. Arrived.
When you're as busy as I am, you'll find yourself with less and less time to go grocery shopping. We all know that getting fast food on a regular basis is not a great solution for that. Thankfully, there's a healthier and affordable option out there, and it's Blue Apron. Blue Apron is the #1 fresh ingredient and recipe delivery service in the country, and their mission is to make incredible home cooking accessible to everyone. Blue Apron has established partnerships with over 150 local farms, fisheries, and ranchers all across America. That means you can eat a delicious meal at a fraction of what you would pay at a restaurant, while also supporting your local community. My wife and I have used Blue Apron for a long time now, and each week we have a fresh batch of new and exciting recipes with top quality ingredients for less than $10 a meal. You can choose from a huge variety of new recipes each week, or you can let the Blue Apron culinary team surprise you, and their recipes aren't repeated, so you'll never get bored. Check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals for free and with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/upandvanished. That's blueapron.com/upandvanished. I'm good. How are you? I'm here to see the mayor.
What's your name?
Payne.
Payne?
Yes.
Okay.
Hey guys.
What's up, man?
How's it going?
How you doing, man?
You said I'm video right away casual today.
Oh, yeah, I'm casual too, yeah.
Turn the lights on, glass little heat, just wanted to
Sweet.
chill out.
That's perfect, man. Yeah, that's awesome. Oh, cool.
Well, my name is Matt Seal, and I'm the mayor of the city of Ocilla, Georgia. So that's not a full-time job, or at least not by pay.
Really?
Yeah, people, they don't believe that. I'm very upfront. I tell them my paycheck is $700 a month, which I'm pretty sure that's $8,400 a year. So no, that doesn't pay all the bills. I'm a financial advisor, got my own small firm, and then my wife and I own a retail shop called The Shops at 4th and Cherry. It's got a little cafe that serves lunch. So she does most of the work on that. I get to say I own it on paper, but she got to tell me what to, she tells me what happens in there in West Notwood.
So tell me, why are you the mayor of Ocilla?
Well, being involved with a downtown business, we certainly got involved, with trying to help with economic development. Mm-hmm. Partly because, I came here from somewhere else. I didn't grow up here. So I saw a lot of potential in town, and that was why I bought a building, and that's how I met my wife. Obviously, I had some self-interest. I would love for Ocilla to grow because, well, my business will do better. But part of the reason I came here is I just wanted to be a part of something like this and just saw opportunities that weren't being taken. So I kind of voiced my opinion, wrote a couple columns in the paper, and I guess because of that, got encouraged to get into local politics and said no a lot. But in 2015, there was a special election when the current mayor had resigned to run for another office in the state. I guess I just couldn't say no enough times. So I got encouraged to run and won that election. So I've only been the mayor for a year and 4 months, I think. And because that was a special election, if I want to continue, I'll have to run again later this year.
Can I ask how old you are?
Yeah, I'm about to turn 40 in 2 months. So I'm 39 now.
So are you the youngest mayor in Ocilla history, or is that...
Our police chief, Billy Hancock, actually, he says he wants to verify this, but he's actually pretty good about looking in old records. I joke with him. He's the city of Ocilla official or unofficial historian. But he says that, yeah, I'm the youngest mayor They have in history. And the longest serving mayor is actually a recent mayor, Lamar Royal, who served 3 full terms, so 12 years.
Oh, wow.
So, because apparently the terms used to be 2 years because of the special election. If I do 3 full terms, then my one piece. I said, well, I'm not sure if I'm in for that long, but we'll see.
Right. So tell me, you as mayor of Ocilla, this is a very small town. It's very different than Atlanta or any other big cities out there. What is it like living here? What are the differences from Ocilla and a bigger city?
I guess the biggest thing is there's less people, which means less traffic, which a lot of people would like that aspect of it. Yeah, I actually sought it out. I actually lived in Atlanta. I'm actually in Marietta, so in the Atlanta area before I moved down here. Really was just interested in staying down here, but bought a building and ended up becoming a resident pretty quickly after that. Certainly there's aspects that people want to see change in small towns like Ocilla. You know, want a little more economic development, a little more activities. So there's a balance there, because if you want the small town living, there's some things you're not going to have as much access to. But like with anything, there's pros and cons, and there's a balance. And I really prefer this. There's just a little over 3,400 people in Ocilla. I think there are smaller towns where, in getting to know mayors and council members from other cities through conferences and meetings with the Georgia Municipal Association, there are cities that have 300 and 400 people, and obviously there's unincorporated cities that have even less than that. So that seems a bit too small, but I've always felt like even from the beginning, Ocilla's kind of got a critical mass. There's some stuff going. We have 2 traffic lights, there's
right.
There's stuff to do. There's a little bit of business industry going. We're trying to grow some more, and we're starting to gain some traction.
Sell me on Ocilla. What is Ocilla? What is this place?
Sell you on Ocilla. It really is the best of both worlds. Now, if you need to have a Starbucks coffee house, 5 blocks from the last Starbucks coffee house, Ocilla is not for you. But if you're looking for a place that's got some good amenities, some good people, and an opportunity to have a good lifestyle, Ocilla is it's a great city, and it's only getting better by the day.
One thing I noticed that's different between a small town like Ocilla and Atlanta, where I'm from, is that it seems like everyone actually knows each other. I know that's like everyone always says that, but it really appears that way when you're saying, hey, waving at someone on the street and, I'm going over here to this person. Oh, yeah, I know that person. It's like...
Definitely. And I guess because of its size, it's real easy to get to know most of the people because there's fewer of them to know. But I think people enjoy getting to know each other. And part of that, I'm sure part of that's curiosity. You see the new person in town, you go, hey, what's this person doing here? I don't know who they are, and I want to find out. So there may be some of that as far as just general curiosity, but I think there's an actual caring. And what's amazing, and I think this goes to small town, but certainly in Ocilla, people that don't even really like each other all the time will come together when they need to be. I guess that sense of community is very prevalent here. People that are just polar opposites and just don't jive when they're needed. They're neighbors. They're part of the same community, and they come together to help each other out. And I think that's something that might be, nothing against big cities, but I think that's something that might be a little lost in a big city.
This podcast is about Tara Grinstead, who's still missing from here. Describe how that mystery has had an effect on this town.
So I bought the building I referenced. I've got the retail shop. I bought that in November of 2004. And was really back and forth. And so it was, I guess, in that first year, because that was 2005, fall of 2005, when she first went missing. So, yeah, I did not know who she was. I'd never met her before. But certainly it was something that just gripped the whole town because, it still is a tragedy for anyone to go missing and especially to not have that resolved. It certainly brought a lot of spotlight to Ocilla. And while that's not something you want to be known for, that's a negative, not a positive.
Right.
But Ocilla was certainly, I guess, welcoming of the publicity and really out of a genuine concern of wanting to solve the mystery, wanting hopefully to have it come out with a happy ending. But yeah, it certainly caused a lot of buzz. I really distinctly remember, and again, these are my first impressions of Ocilla, and never, I told you my story of how I became mayor. It was never a plan, certainly not in 2005. But I just remember every weekend there just being massive, mobilization of essentially, a manhunt. People going out on 4-wheelers, just looking in all different places. It was big on the weekends, but there was certainly people going out and trying to assist law enforcement or doing their own searches as community groups. And I guess going back to your small town questions, that was something I didn't think would happen in a bigger, there's law enforcement, there's people that are supposed to do that. Now, people that barely knew her or had met her once or just heard her name were out on four-wheelers and with their own resources trying to look for clues, look for answers. So I remember that was a big thing for a long time, a lot longer than I expected. It wasn't just like, oh, one weekend we're going to go out and try to search and, oh, well, we didn't find anything. It was, weeks on end. So that's some of the things that just come to mind in thinking about those early days when she first went missing. Certainly, it's brought a lot of publicity, even in our retail shop.
Yeah.
We have people that come through town that are not from here, and they'll ask, hey, what's the latest on this? We remember seeing this on the story, seeing on television, on the radio, we didn't have podcasts that were as prevalent, I guess, back then, but I'm sure it was talked about in various mediums. And that slowly kind of faded away. Although, honestly, this podcast has brought it back. And I'm sure that any kind of similar incident that's ever happened in another town, the people in that town think up until that point, oh, that would never happen here. And this is one of those places. The idea that kind of thing happens with any regularity is just nothing could be farther from the truth. So that's why it gripped people. So yeah, it's certainly not a scary place. And I guess really to that point, that's why this still affects people after coming up on 12 years this year.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that people still talk about, still ask about.
Obviously, people still want answers. Family still wants the truth, and we all want there to be a resolution. I think that no one should ever give up on finding that. I mean, obviously, it's a sword that will never go away.
I'll say this about our police department. I've never heard anybody from the Ocilla Police Department refer to this as a cold case. I mean, it's still an open case, and anybody that ever had any information, they would jump on it with the same vigor now as they did in 2005. There's very much a desire to solve it, to resolve it, to chase any new leads that came in. Obviously, those are fewer and farther between after time goes by. There's certainly that coming together that just happens whenever any kind of tragedy, and certainly that happened here as I described. People just pulling together, and whether you were close friends with Tara or whether you never heard of her before, hey, this bad thing happened, and we as a community need to do whatever we can. And there's certainly a sadness that there wasn't anything fully resolved.
How do you think, like a small town like Ocilla, there could be such a big secret kept?
I mean, I couldn't begin to answer that, except that I guess whoever or multiple whoever's were involved just did a good job about covering their tracks somehow. But yeah, you're right. And if anybody had bragged about any aspect of that, I would be surprised that didn't get around, because you're right. In a small town, it's hard to keep things.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people that are now my age talk about how they did something. They skipped school. They went out with a girl they weren't supposed to. By the time they got home, their parents were already waiting for them because it already traveled back. So there's certainly that aspect of information traveling very fast in small towns. So then that's the other thing too. You'd think, because the leads and the amount of resources that are put into this, you'd think we would have found something would have led to resolution. So.
Last thing I want to ask you, what kind of message do you want to send to listeners out there who maybe have the wrong idea of what Ocilla is?
Well, I'd say, like I say, you mentioned before, if people are only getting their impression of Ocilla and have only heard of it because of this one tragedy that happened, I tell them it is a great town with great people. It's a great community. It's up and coming. I mean, it's like a small town anywhere where good things happen most days. And when something bad like this happens, the community pulls together and just works through it the best way it can. And unfortunately, sometimes the ideal resolution doesn't occur, but the community still comes together to push on and move forward. There's no place like Ocilla, Georgia. You should all come down and visit.
If you like podcasts, which I assume you do, then you'll probably like audiobooks. And the best place to get that is Audible. Audible is the leading provider of premium digital spoken audio content. They have an unmatched selection of audiobooks and other audio products. When you sign up as an Audible listener, you get book credits and access to short programs, now playing in channels each month for a low monthly fee. You can download your favorite choices and access them on your iPhone, Android device, Fire tablet, iPod, or any other MP3 player. Audible carries titles in business, classics, erotica, fiction, history, romance, mystery and thrillers, sci-fi and fantasy, self-development, kids and young adult categories. They have pretty much everything. And Audible has an amazing app that makes listening even easier. They have exclusive originals, short stories, and comedy. And because Audible supports Up and Vanished, they have a special offer for you. Audible will give you a free audiobook with a 30-day trial membership. To redeem this offer, all you have to do is go to audible.com/up. So check out their offer. Just go to audible.com/up and get a free audiobook and a free 30-day trial membership. audible.com/up. Now back to the show. All right, man. After our meeting with the mayor, we walked to the building behind City Hall, and we met with somebody you've heard before. Dusty Vassy, the reporter for the local newspaper, the Ocilla Star.
Okay. I didn't know.
We sat down in his back office and asked him some questions.
What's new?
Well, I'm Dusty Vassy, the reporter for the Ocilla Star. I've lived in Irwin County most of my life. I've never actually lived in Ocilla, but I live 10 miles away, and I work here every day, so pretty familiar with the place. It's slow here. I mean, it's a small town. It's not that unusual from any other small town in South Georgia. Most places are populations under 10,000.
I guess compare Ocilla to like a bigger city. What are the main differences on the positive side of things?
A positive, low crime. Everybody knows you. It's not hard to get help if you have any problems. You know, if you get broke down on the side of the road, somebody will usually stop. Or a lot of people know each other, but not everybody knows each other. I generally know the people who are involved in politics or business owners and that sort of thing, because those are the ones who are in the news a lot. Depends on what your circle is, really.
What is small town life like? Let me just pose this question for you. Do you have a cell phone?
No, but I'm unusual in that. Everybody else
But aren't
does.
you a reporter?
Yes.
How do you not have a cell phone?
I'm usually someplace where there's a phone. I mean, it's not that difficult.
Right. Well, see, in Atlanta, I would never be a place where there's a phone. I mean, I guess there's people around me with cell phones all the time, but they're strangers to me, and I'd have to borrow a stranger's cell phone, which is not the easiest or most comfortable thing to do. The fact that you don't, there's no way you could be a reporter in Atlanta without a cell phone.
Oh, no, probably not. An example of what there is to do around here, which is nothing. What people do, and this is typical of a lot of South Georgia towns, like the high schoolers and even the early 20-year-olds and whatnot, they just ride around town in their pickup trucks or their cars, and they'll ride around the car parking lots. And Tifton, which is nearby, at times it would just get jammed up where you could, on a Friday night, you can't drive through town because of just so many people just driving around cruising. I mean.
Right.
And that's all there is to do. I mean, you can go to the movie theater, or you can go hang out at somebody's house, or go to a bonfire out in the woods somewhere. But there's just not a lot to do.
Do you like living in a small town?
I do. The traffic was too much to me. I just didn't like it. I don't like being in a hurry, and I don't ever really feel like I'm in a hurry here.
Population of 3,000 or so people here, so the chances of you knowing somebody are a lot greater than a bigger city.
Mm-hmm.
So how does something like Tara Grinstead going missing, how does that happen?
Well, like I say, two can keep a secret. If one of them's dead, probably only one person knows that secret. And that's how it's remained secret for all these years. I don't buy the police cover-up stories and all that the jazz. I think if more than one person knew about this case, it would have already been found out because somebody would have said something over the years. Maybe not, but that's my feeling.
Yeah. Just her story, the whole tragedy, how has that affected the town of Ocilla?
I mean, obviously it's brought more attention to the town than really anything ever has. I mean, there are people who knew her, who were close to her, who are definitely feel a lot of grief about it, I think. And there's a lot of people who just are very empathetic and share that grief. But then there's also a certain, I think, fascination with just wanting the mystery to be solved. And you talk to people and you're going to hear speculation about who did it, what they think did it, or who they think did it, and what they think happened. And I mean, it's just any mystery. I mean, that's people are going to want to know what happened, and they're going to try to speculate about what they believe might have happened.
Kids who were maybe like really young, or high schoolers now, who weren't necessarily around when this all went down. It's kind of like a legend in a way in the town.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like my 10-year-old niece is interested in the story. Like she wants to know what happened, and I mean, just because she's seen documentaries and stuff, and even though she wasn't even alive then, it's her hometown, so she wants to know because it's a connection to her, and everybody feels that way. I think because it's their hometown, it's their community. There's a connection that wouldn't exist otherwise.
How many stories do you think you have written that had Tara Grinstead's name in it?
Probably about 10 or so. I mean, I wrote about her the week that she went missing.
What's it like having to constantly revisit that because it's so prevalent here and never really coming back with anything new? What's it like writing that and just not ever giving it the ending you want?
Honestly, and there is that frustration. I've learned more about this case since your podcast started than I probably had in 11 years before that.
Why do you think that is, though?
Partially because people are talking about it. And this is one of the things I thought when the podcast started that is definitely held up to be true, is that whereas a documentary, people talk about it that week and then forget about it, your podcast has been going on weekly for 3 months now or so, right? And people talk about it all the time.
Have you ever caught anybody else here in Ocilla talking about it?
Oh, yeah. I talk to people about it all the time. Government employees, police officers, people that work at banks, clerks at stores. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of people listening. I've heard of people listening in other states that people run into. And because I've been on the podcast, people bring it up to me, like, but the podcast has made people talk about things and things I've learned about through the podcast. And we talk about them and we, consider what they could possibly mean through a lens of being a local. Like I said, that fascination, that wanting to know what happened, that they want the mystery solved. Most people, I'm sure, want justice, but I think there's just like almost an itch to have this, to know what happened, and hopefully this podcast will bring us closer to knowing. Every year they have Christmas in the park.
Yeah.
Which is like it raises funds for needy families or needy children, get some gifts for Christmas and stuff. Really nice event. And I run into people that I'm friendly with, but I don't really know very well. And they're, oh, Dusty, let's talk about the podcast. I've got friends in California that are watching the podcast, and they want to know if I know something new that's coming up,
right.
And, which I don't really have a whole lot of inside information. We've talked some that, but.
Do you think this exposure is a positive thing?
Honestly, I think, yes, as far as solving the mystery, I do. A lot of these people that get mentioned a lot most of them are not associated or didn't have anything to do with what happened to her.
Sure. Yeah.
And I feel guilty when I see these people, especially on the discussions, which, is just people having free will.
And you can't always control what someone else is saying.
Obviously not. But.
And I've said it before, that's one of the unfortunate parts about this thing. It's the thing I hate the most is that not everybody is guilty. Not everyone is responsible for what happened, but we don't know what the answer is. So we would be doing Tara a disservice and we would be doing a poor investigation if we just chose to omit people because we felt bad for them. But, I have put a lot of effort into not being accusatory. I've tried to do that.
And you haven't. It's just the fact that it stirred up the pot as far as people who are accusing people, and there are a lot on the discussions. You mean that.
Like locally too?
Well, no. I'm guilty of that, of talking about speculating who I think might have done what or not. But it's when people are publicly doing it, which people are quite, not you, but a lot of people are publicly, accusing people. The positive is that it's brought a lot more knowledge about the case, that a lot of things that just weren't known at all, I think.
You think it's made people more comfortable to talk about it?
I do. Yeah, I do. I think that. But I don't really think that was a big hindrance. I think people would talk about it in private at least, and they still do.
And I think that you're right. I mean, it's not like it ever went away entirely, but I think that the openness of talking about it has allowed for people to connect some of these dots.
For a long time, I suspected one person. I'm not going to say who it was, but through talking to people, to you even, and listening to the podcast since the podcast started, I no longer think that person was guilty. And so the con is that there are people who are innocent, whose name are getting dragged deeply through the mud. including this person I'm talking about. But unless there was some vast conspiracy, only one person is guilty in this situation, and there are multiple people getting talked about. And I mean, I know you can't help that, but that's the negative. But that's been happening even before this podcast. It's just, like I said, kick the hornet's nest a little bit. I'm glad the podcast came along because I've personally learned a lot.
Secrets are going to be secrets forever until they're exposed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that there's a ton of people in Ocilla that have secrets about this case, but until you shine a big bright light on the whole thing, the big picture, it's very, very easy for Ocilla just to sit here by itself, hours away from a big city, and just time just go on, and just before you know it, we have no clue what happened to Tara. And it's already happened a little bit. I think that if you were the victim, I feel like I would want somebody to do whatever it took to get the answer.
And I'll give you credit for this. I mean, Anthony Vickers, for instance, was somebody who was a lot of times mentioned in this case. Well, when you interviewed him, I mean, nobody talks about him anymore. Not that I've heard.
Right.
Because nobody thinks he did it, because he came across as very...
Obviously, we're trying to find the killer. We're trying to find justice. We're trying to find the smoking gun. But the easiest way to do that is to start eliminating people and start eliminating scenarios and make that list a lot smaller, because it was way too big, and it's still too big. As a whole, the town of Ocilla and anyone involved in this case would be better off with their name cleared and that list of suspects or persons of interest, whatever you want to call it, being a real short list. I think that goal, no matter what, is attainable.
Somebody was saying on the discussion about that they need to search this wildlife area. Well, I think people don't realize this is just wilderness. Like, it's farmland, swamps, and forest. It's all that's around here. I mean, this is a large county, just Irwin County. We're basically dead middle South Georgia. Like, considering Macon to be the middle point of Georgia, we're like right in the middle of South Georgia, a little bit to the southwest, I think. But just take it, for example, when you drive in off the interstate. You're driving in 10 miles through the woods and you hit Irwinville. Then 10 miles through the woods and you hit, 5 miles through the woods, you hit Mystic. And then Irwinville is a town of maybe 300 people. Mystic is about the same.
When you get off the highway, you're still about 30 minutes from using the bathroom.
Yeah. I mean, it's just woods and farms. And I think people don't realize it. And this is just one county. And all the counties around here are like that. But this is rural South Georgia farmland. We're basically the start of the swamps. And the farther south you get, the more swampy it gets. I mean, it's all wilderness. And, they search Irwin County, parts of Bentonville County, and I think maybe a little bit of Tift County.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, we don't have any idea where she could be. So just the idea of searching a wildlife area, it could be anywhere.
So last impressions on Ocilla for somebody who only knows it from the podcast.
Well,
let's put it that way.
I don't think it's as strange a place as Dr. Godwin first described it on the early podcasts.
Okay.
I think it's actually pretty typical for a South Georgia town. I mean, I've been to a lot of them, and they're all pretty, little small towns where people know each other, and mostly farms and a lot of farming community. And this terrible thing happened here. I mean, other terrible things happen other places, but they usually get solved. And that's the difference here, is that this one hasn't been solved. And there's no body, there's no smoking gun, we have the DNA and the fingerprint, but it hasn't matched anybody, so it's been completely useless.
Like called Skillshare.com that has over 14,000 classes on literally almost anything you could think of. And these aren't those cheesy online college courses or something. At Skillshare.com, each class is a truly unique and engaging experience. And they're all taught by industry leaders and real experts in their field. I just signed up, and my favorite class so far is learning how to chop food like a real chef in the kitchen. And I'm learning it from an actual professional chef. The Skillshare website is super easy to use. And once you log in, you'll be surprised by how many things you didn't know but want to learn about, like street photography, mixing and mastering your music, ink drawing, designing a logo, or even how to brand your business. Your membership gives you access to all these classes, over 14,000 of them. So if you're ready to sharpen your skills or learn something brand new, it's time to check out Skillshare.com And because Skillshare.com supports Up and Vanished, they're going to give you a whole month to try it out for free. To redeem this offer, just go to Skillshare.com/CE for case evidence. That's Skillshare.com/CE for case evidence. Now back to the show. I asked Maurice to describe his experience in Ocilla from over 11 years ago now.
Before arriving, I did not have any preconceived notion about Ocilla or any South Georgia town. I'd never been there before, and I was looking forward to arriving and getting started on the case. And when I arrived, I was greeted by several family members and some of the searchers who have been diligently working on the case, and I was given a positive welcome. And Ocilla is a nice little town, and it still is today, and has always been. But, I was not there to vacation or to see someone. I was there to work on a Georgia's biggest missing person case, which happened to involve one of the local individuals, a native Ocillian, Marcus Harper, as unofficially one of the persons of interest there, although I was not eyeing toward any particular type of suspect. I was just trying to find out some information and the truth. As days progressed on, I ran into some obstacles. Just the slightest hint in a question or a soft interview, I was asked to leave. One person just escorted me out the fence back to the car, told me not to come back. And I really didn't even ask anything. So with those obstacles, and then when I was threatened, when the truck at 3 o'clock in the morning showed up at the RV where I was staying at the campground outside of Ocilla, all this really molded my opinion that there's something in the air in that town. And so it clouded my view a little bit. But generally, as a small town and stuff, it's a good little town. But when you're there working on a case, you're trying to find out information, that's what's the most important thing. It was very mixed feelings. I met a lot of resistance. For example, with an interview with one of the detectives in the case, came in, sat down. This is when I first got there, probably the second day. Lasted 10 minutes, got up and walked out. He did. And I hadn't even asked 2 questions. You see, in cases like this, it's not who you talk to necessarily. It's questions that you ask. And if you do get to talk to people that's directly involved and stuff, you can ask 10 questions and never ask the right one. You're wasting your time if you don't ask the correct questions in a lot of cases. But one thing you have to understand is this was a fluid situation when I arrived there. It was anticipated by some that I was coming. So they had, some people there was a word out on the street that I was coming. So I think some people had, it wasn't a surprise to a lot of people. So some people had time to prepare answers, prepare responses or no response. And also the learning curve for me on this case, when I first got involved, was I was learning as I was going. The case was October 2005, but down here in North Carolina, I was so busy with other cases, and I originally turned the case down and later accepted it. I had heard about the case, but I didn't know anything about it that much. So basically, I was learning as I was going about the case. Obviously in 2017, I have hindsight, of 11 years, and definitely would have asked or different questions, more questions, but that wouldn't necessarily have helped me as much, because even in a lot of the situations, I'm not sure that I would even have been allowed to ask those questions without somebody being offended and not participating any longer. Or, if I'm not going to ask correct questions to try to get some answers or half answers to something, then I might as well not even ask any questions. And when I arrived, I was inundated with people to meet, people to talk to. I spent from 7 o'clock a.m. in the morning to midnight every night that I was there. I spent about 60% of the time at Tara's house, going through the house, photographing, doing whatever I had to do there. Also talking to people who I could talk to, or trying to find people who talk to, following the breadcrumbs from one person to another. It's like any investigation. You talk to one person or get one piece of information, 5 to 10 other pieces of information develops from that. So that carried about 60 to 70% of my time. The rest of the time, I helped out with the other searchers. I was actually in the woods with the snakes, with the heat, searching. I was out at Snapdragon. I was there when the pond was drained, and I went to what we call the Boneyard out in Ben Hill and searched there. And so, it was very, I tried to divide my time the best I could, but it was a jam-packed day every day. So really, I didn't have any time hardly to think about strategy. And so I just had people after people after people coming to me, contacting me, calling me. And so, it has taken years to even process a lot of this information. And then you had the rumors were more rampant back then than almost as they are now. So, I had to try to separate fact from rumor. It was just very, very difficult. And sometimes it still is. So, it's a very difficult process. And sure, I made mistakes. There's no doubt about it. And there's people who's criticized me, but they were not in my shoes in that all this environment and everything. So it was a very fluid situation. And so at the particular time, I did get resistance and pushback during the investigation. How does this Ocilla keep a secret for so long? In my opinion, there's no doubt about it. Somebody in Ocilla, Georgia, other than the killer, knows what happened to Tara Grinstead. It's a death penalty case, likely. Georgia just passed Texas for the most executions. This is a death penalty case, most likely. But if a person has information, they can work out some type of deal to come forward. And how can people hold secrets this long? Loyalty to a friend, loyalty to the town, and also combine that with being scared. And it's doubtful that, you could have possibly one killer, and one killer only knows about it. But that's hard to pull off. I'm not saying that it was accomplice or anything. I'm just saying one killer and one killer only knows about it. That could be one answer to why that it's been unsolved for so long. Only one person knows it. There's got to be at least one other person that knows something, a hint, a slight piece of information, or whatever. And the key here is having information that the GBI does not have that can move the case forward. It really would have to be something that they don't have that can move the case forward. The threatening phone call that I received at home was from after my first visit. So I went back afterwards, and that's when I was staying in the RV, and when the truck was outside about 3 o'clock in the morning. So I would not do it now without a gun, and I should have had one back then, but I didn't. I wasn't scared, but I was very cautious. I had people, some of the searchers followed me from wherever I was back to where I was staying at. They watched me to go in, and they watched me lock the RV and everything. And so I had, some people with me and stuff, but I wasn't scared, but I was just very cautious and being observant.
In this next part of the episode, I want to take the time to tell you more about Tara. When you're focusing so hard on the details of her disappearance, It's easy to gloss over the details of her life and who she really was. Not to mention, it's been very difficult for those who knew her closely to come forward and tell us about her. I've recently spoke to several new people who knew her very well. And today, I want to take the time to tell you everything I've learned about Tara Grinstead. Tara Faye Grinstead was born in Hawkinsville, Georgia, to Billy and Faye Grinstead on November 14th, 1974. During her upbringing in Hawkinsville, she was a cheerleader and an active member of their Baptist church. After high school, she went to Middle Georgia College to pursue higher education and become a teacher. She later earned a master's degree in education from Valdosta State University, and she was planning to pursue a doctorate degree at the time of her disappearance. In 1998, Tara began teaching at Irwin County High School in Ocilla. Tara was a devoted and well-liked 11th grade history teacher. She was compassionate and truly cared for her students, inside the classroom and outside, even allowing one student to temporarily live with her after the student's house burned down. She loved history, and she enjoyed visiting museums and historical buildings. She even named her dog Dolly Madison and her cat Herman Talmadge. As for her background in beauty pageants, Tara first took up pageantry to earn scholarship money for college. She participated in numerous pageants and was crowned Miss Tifton in 1999. Later that year, she also competed for the title of Miss Georgia. Tara wanted to pass along her knowledge and experience in pageantry, so she would coach some of the younger girls in Ocilla. One of Tara's last known whereabouts on that Saturday she went missing was helping the young pageant contestants with their hair and makeup at her house. She was 30 years old at the time of her disappearance. There's very few audio clips of Tara speaking out there, but this is one of them, from a 1999 interview in Tifton about the Miss Georgia pageant.
I'm from Hawkinsville, which is a big rival to Ocilla as far as schools go. I was a Red Devil in Hawkinsville. Now I'm an Indian, but I've enjoyed being in Ocilla. My parents have lived there for 3 years. I have been in pageants in high school, and I had always wanted to go to Miss Georgia, and as you know, that's a different type of pageant, so I worked very hard, and it took me a while. I competed in 19 Miss Georgia preliminaries, and it took me 4 years, but I was determined that I was going to reach my goal. And Miss Tifton was my second to the last pageant, since 24 is the age limit, and I was graciously titled Miss Tifton, and I'm very excited. Everyone knows being Miss Tifton is like another job, and I have worked very hard and to represent Tifton very well, and I hope to do very well at Miss Georgia to make the Tifton community proud.
Now, what did your students say when you went in on that Monday or whatever day it was you went back to work and you told them that you had won Miss Tifton? What were some of the statements?
Actually, I didn't have to tell them because it had already gotten around the school before I'd gotten there Monday. But when I walked into my classroom, the very first class that I had, they wanted to start the class off by talking about, tell us what you're going to do when you go to Miss Georgia. And I said, we've got to do our lesson first. And so I gave my notes hoping that they would forget by the end of class. But the last 10 minutes of class, they said, you said we could talk about it if we got through with our work. So they were asking a lot of questions, very curious.
I want to take a second to talk to you about Hunt a Killer. Yes, Hunt a Killer. Kind of like what we're doing. Except for this is an interactive investigation delivered right to your doorstep each month. These guys completely reimagined the art of storytelling, and they put you right into the mind of a serial killer. It's like Silence of the Lambs, but in real life. You can join by going to huntakiller.com and apply for a membership. They're growing really fast, so they're limiting their membership to only 250 people each week. If you're accepted, you'll receive an email with a private link to complete your registration. From there, a package arrives at your doorstep each month, filled with physical items and correspondence, curated by their serial killer, and you have to decode them. Hunt a Killer has been featured in BuzzFeed, Fast Company, and even the editors of Bustle are writing about it. It's because Hunt a Killer is almost building a cult-like community around this real-time interactive investigation. So if you consider yourself a sleuth, this is perfect for you. And if investigating isn't your thing, you still probably know someone who would love this as a gift. Hunt a Killer is now supporting Up and Vanished, so they're offering a 10% discount to our listeners. To redeem this offer, use the code GONE, and you'll get 10% off. So after this episode, go on over to huntakiller.com and register now. And be sure to tell them Up and Vanish sent you. That's huntakiller.com, promo code GONE. Since I embarked on this journey, it's been very difficult to find people who are really close to Tara and also willing to talk about it. Thankfully, this last week, I made contact with one of Tara's best friends, who also competed with her in the pageants.
Well, I was Aja Anderson when we met. I'm Aja Domenico now. And we met in pageants. We were both competing to get a pass and crown to Miss Georgia. And so we competed in some local preliminary pageants together and got to know each other. And it was funny, a lot of people thought that we looked alike. So we would often joke about that. And we had a similar, what they call a platform at the time, which was about the environment and recycling and promoting that. And so we kind of bonded on that. She reached out to me and asked for, my thoughts and advice on her platform. And then she competed at Miss Georgia as Miss Tifton the year that I won Miss Georgia.
Okay, very cool. Do you remember the first time you met Tara?
I want to say it was in a pageant in Thomaston, Georgia. I think it was called Miss Central Georgia. I think that's the pageant where we first met and then exchanged information and stayed in touch with each other. And I think it was maybe the following year. It will take me a while to kind of retrace my steps on that. But we knew each other at least a couple of years, I think, before she won Miss Tifton and competed at Miss Georgia that year. Because I remember we would stay in touch, and I was kind of following her. She competed in several preliminaries to get to Miss Georgia.
Right.
She was determined. And plus it's great scholarship money. And Tara was very independent and paid for everything herself. So it helped her a lot to complete her education, which she was still completing it. At the time that she disappeared, she was pursuing her PhD. So that was her ultimate goal, was to get her PhD.
Right. What kind of person was she? How would you describe her to someone who's never met her before?
Like one of the nicest people you've ever met. Like just all around great, sweet person. Very hardworking. Very, very, very hardworking. Very organized. Just a great teacher. Loved her job. I mean, the kind of teacher everybody would want their kid to have. Just a sweetheart. She was. She could be very serious. She was very goal oriented and very determined. But just a true sweetheart. Had a beautiful voice. We had a lot of good times. So she would come to Atlanta. I mean, this was even post pageant days. She would come to Atlanta and stay with me some, and we would, shop and hang out together in Atlanta. And then sometimes if I was coming through that area of the state, I would stop and stay at her house. I remember eating a lot. We loved to eat.
Me too.
we loved Steak and Shake. We would get french fries and milkshakes because it's salt and sweet on our road trips together. And she was a great cook. But we would try to eat healthy as well. And I remember she would always make these kind of no-bake cheesecakes with Splenda. This is when Splenda just came out. And so she just went to town creating different recipes. And we would make these kind of low carb. Well, she would make them. I would eat them. She would try to teach me to make them. I'm not very good in the kitchen. And so every time I would stop through, I was like, please, please, please make me one of those, whatever they were called. It was like a no-bake cheesecake with like a graham cracker crust and Cool Whip, fat-free Cool Whip and fat-free cream cheese or something.
That sounds pretty good.
I forget how she did it. It was delicious. We would sit there and eat the whole pie, though. So that was the problem. We keep going back for another slice of pie. But I remember eating lots of those. I remember her love for Gone with the Wind. Definitely remember that. She had lots of Gone with the Wind paraphernalia around her house. She's also really good on eBay. She would sell some stuff for me on eBay, like my old pageant gowns. And I paid her a commission for everything she sold. She's just really self-sufficient and really an amazing young lady. Very, very, very independent and self-sufficient and a sweetheart. Just a really, of most of the people I know, certainly my friends, she would have been the last one I would have ever guessed would disappear like this. And she wasn't a risky person. You know, she wasn't a partier. She didn't drink. She certainly didn't use any kind of drugs or associate with folks of that nature. So, you know, she lived in a small town. She was a teacher, you know, just a good girl. And she just didn't put herself in situations that would put her at this kind of risk to disappear. The last person I would have ever imagined this happening to, honestly. But she's a very, I don't use the word control freak, but she's just, you know, her house is always perfectly organized. She's very, you know, focused on completing her education and her career. If she, you know, when she wanted to go to Miss Georgia, she was very, you know, laser focused on getting there. I mean, nothing deters her. And so I could see her just not wanting to be out of control, and having any kind of drug or alcohol put her in that state. That's just not her personality. She was more quiet, I would say, than your average. There's other quiet pageant girls, but typically I think ladies that are attracted to pageants are a little more outgoing and like to kind of show off on stage. And obviously she didn't mind that and she enjoyed it, but she was definitely more quiet. Definitely. And, you know, just kind of had a shyer, more introverted type personality. But when it was time to, you know, go into her interview or get up on stage and sing or anything, I mean, she could turn it on and she could be very, you know, outgoing in appearance on stage. But on a personal level, she's actually pretty quiet. Once you get to know her, I mean, she'd loosen up and cut up with you, but she's, you know, at first a pretty quiet girl.
You said that, like, you thought, like, this is the last person you ever thought this would happen to, right?
True.
Based on what you know about Tara and knowing her personally for several years, do you think, is she the kind of person who would have ran away?
No. She's too responsible for that. She wouldn't do that to her students. Never.
What about commit suicide?
No, it was the most ridiculous thought. And then, you know, hide her own body. I mean, no. I mean, she certainly is human, and she may have felt, you know, depressed about her personal relationship and had maybe moments of depression, really, but she would never seriously do that. No, I don't believe that for a second. I mean, I never heard her say that, ever, or even get anywhere near that. That kind of comment ever. And I mean, and she cried to me. I mean, she certainly showed me emotion when it came to her relationships, but never spoke like that with me.
Did she ever cry in front of you?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, you know, her relationship with Marcus was difficult at times. I mean, it was long distance for a lot of it. It was a long-term relationship. She wanted to get married, and, you know, I mean, she was made for it. I mean, she's like the perfect wife. She cooks and creates she's a good homemaker and just a great girl. And I think, you know, there were times she was frustrated, that, you know, that never materialized, and it seemed more and more difficult. And she was very patient, you know, and his kind of broad and waiting and very loyal. So sure, yeah, I saw her get frustrated. Absolutely. She was a quiet and private person, though, too. So, you know, even with me, I'm not sure she ever fully opened up to me.
Right.
Because I hadn't known her. We weren't childhood friends. You know, we were adult friends. And so I always, and we didn't see each other all the time. We lived in two different, you know, we lived hours apart. But I didn't, you know, no intimate thoughts of hers. I don't think she ever really shared. And particularly now, I'm certain of it because I've heard things like that email is honestly shocking to me. I just can't believe she would actually say that. But she was a very quiet person, though. She was a quiet, private person. She was a really good person, and she truly, I mean, the thing that just always impressed me most about her was her passion for her students and her job and history. She loved history. She was just incredible. I mean, she would talk to me about different things that she was getting ready for her class, and I would just always sit back and admire. You know, she just went beyond the extra mile for her kids and just to be the best teacher she could be.
Right.
So it's like, you know, why do people like that have to go away? You know, it's just, she really had an impact on those students. So it's just, I don't understand it. I really don't.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. We have some good news. we are now officially funded for a second season. In the coming months, I'll be releasing all the details as Maurice and I get things in order for season 2 of Up and Vanished on a new case. And as a reminder, episode 13 is only a week away. It comes out on Monday, February 27th. And trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. And in the meantime, we have one more bonus episode prepared for you that will come out on Wednesday. I recently collaborated with the host of Undisclosed, Actual Innocence, and Truth and Justice. And we came together to discuss a completely different case that's been brought to our attention. So look out for that on Wednesday. I also want to give a special thanks to Resonate Recordings for editing and mixing today's episode. They specialize in podcast editing and production. If you're looking to improve the quality of your podcast or start a podcast of your own, check them out at resonaterecordings.com. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you soon.